My name is Rebecca Shaw, but everyone calls me Becca. I'm 25 years old, and I used to believe that family was a synonym for unconditional love. That beautiful, fragile idea was completely demolished on the night of my brother Marcus's high school graduation dinner. It was the culmination of years of being treated differently, a single moment that finally shattered my heart. My father proudly handed Marcus the keys to a brand new car for scraping by, then turned to me, his eyes cold, and handed me a bill for rent. My perfect 4.0 GPA and a full-ride scholarship had apparently bought me nothing but higher stakes and a lot less affection. That single evening set my entire life on a new course. Before I get into how everything was turned upside down that night, I'd love to know where you're watching from. And if you've ever felt like a ghost in your own home, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Growing up as the older sister to Marcus, who's 6 years my junior, felt like living in parallel universes that happened to share a roof. I started noticing early on just how differently our parents, especially my dad, Robert Shaw, treated us. When Marcus brought home a C on his report card, he got a trip for ice cream and a pat on the back. When I brought home straight A's, the response was a curt nod, and that's what's expected of you. This imbalance just became more pronounced as we got older. I graduated from high school as the valedictorian, secured a full academic scholarship to the state university, and managed to keep a 4.0 GPA while juggling a part-time job to pay for my living expenses. When I graduated from college 3 years ago, the celebration was a quiet dinner at home. My gift? A mug with the words, "The real world starts now," printed on the side. Meanwhile, Marcus stumbled through his high school years with a collection of C's and D's, barely crossing the finish line on time this year. After finishing my degree, I moved back home. It was supposed to be a temporary, strategic move. The idea was to work for a year or two, build up my savings, and then apply for a master's program in social work. I landed a position at a community wellness center as an intake specialist. The pay was decent, but not nearly enough to afford an apartment in our notoriously expensive city while also saving for grad school. Living with my parents was meant to be a launch pad, not a step backward. My father, a successful contractor who built his business from the ground up, always had this unbreakable bond with Marcus. They were into sports and cars, things I never cared much for. I was more like my mother, Eleanor, a kindergarten teacher with a love for books and quiet intellectual pursuits. But even my mom seemed to just go along with the favoritism instead of ever challenging it. Whenever I'd try to point out the glaring differences in how we were treated, she'd offer up excuses like, "Your father just has different ways of showing love," or the classic, "Marcus just needs more encouragement than you do." I lost count of how many times I tried to talk to them about how unfair it all was. I remember one time, after a significant promotion at my job was met with complete silence, while Marcus getting his first part-time gig at the mall was cause for a huge celebratory dinner, I calmly asked my parents if they could see the difference in their reactions. "You're comparing apples and oranges, Becca," my dad had said, not even looking up from his newspaper. "You've always been independent. Marcus needs a little more help to find his footing." My relationship with Marcus himself was complicated. He wasn't a bad kid. He wasn't malicious about being the favorite. Honestly, he seemed totally oblivious to it. He looked up to me, always coming to me for help with his homework or for advice on what to do with his life. I never held it against him personally. If anything, I was worried. I feared that all the coddling was going to leave him completely unprepared for the real world. Throughout my early 20s, I clung to this sliver of hope that things would eventually even out. I thought that once I was established in my career, my father would finally see me as the competent, successful adult I was working so hard to become. Every small victory at work, every dollar I painstakingly saved for my future, I mentally filed away as another piece of evidence that would one day, finally, win his approval. The events that led up to Marcus's graduation day laid out a picture so clear I had to actively ignore it. About 3 months ago, I received a pretty substantial performance bonus at work. I was so excited, and I shared the news at the dinner table. My dad just nodded and immediately turned to Marcus to ask him about his soccer game. When Marcus managed to get into the local community college, despite his lackluster grades, my parents took him to a fancy steakhouse and invited half our extended family. When I was accepted into all 5 of the competitive master's programs I had applied to, my mom baked a cake, but my dad was too busy with work to even join us. Last Christmas, my dad gave Marcus a top-of-the-line gaming console to reward him for improving his English grade from a D to a C-. My gift was a daily planner for the new year with a little note that said, "To help you organize your goals." The gap was so huge that even my Aunt Carol raised an eyebrow. "Your father has always had trouble connecting with people who don't think exactly like him," she told me in private. "It's not about love, Becca. It's about his own limitations." Her words were meant to be kind, but they didn't do much to soothe the sting of feeling overlooked for my entire life. Despite all of it, I tried to be a good daughter and sister. I voluntarily contributed to the household bills, did way more than my fair share of the chores, and was always available to help Marcus with his college applications and essays. I kept telling myself that families are complex, that my parents just had different love languages, and that eventually my father would see me. Marcus's graduation day was the day all those carefully built excuses came crashing down. His high school graduation was on a beautiful, sunny Saturday in June. I'd put in for the day off weeks in advance, even though it meant passing up a critical training session at work that was a stepping stone to another promotion. "Family comes first," I told my boss, really wanting to believe it was true. The morning of the graduation, I was up early to help my mom get everything ready for the big dinner we were hosting that night. We were expecting grandparents, aunts, uncles, and a few family friends to celebrate Marcus's big achievement. I spent 3 hours deep cleaning the house while my mom worked on her famous pot roast and apple pie. "Your brother is just over the moon," my mom said, as we worked together in the kitchen. "It's all he's been talking about for weeks." "I'm happy for him," I said, and I truly was. In spite of everything, I wanted Marcus to feel celebrated on his day. I had spent nearly $100, a significant chunk of my tight budget, on a graduation gift for him, a beautiful leather-bound journal with his initials embossed on it, and a gift card to his favorite bookstore. Marcus had recently shown a flicker of interest in writing, and I wanted to nurture that little spark. While we were setting up, I overheard my parents talking in low voices in their bedroom. "Do you think he has any idea about the surprise?" my mom asked. "Not a chance," my dad replied, his voice full of a warm excitement I hadn't heard in years. "The look on his face is going to be absolutely priceless." I felt that old familiar ache in my chest, a mix of genuine happiness for my brother and a deep, gnawing hurt that none of my accomplishments had ever been worthy of such thrilling secrecy. Just last month, I'd been accepted into a top-tier master's program with a partial scholarship, and my father's only comment had been, "Make sure that's a practical career path before you get in too deep." My phone buzzed. It was a text from my best friend, Chloe. "Good luck today. Remember our talk. Stand your ground if things get weird. Love you." Chloe had seen the family dynamic up close and had been my biggest advocate for setting boundaries. I texted back a quick, "Thanks, I'll try," before getting back to the cleaning. By early afternoon, it was time to head to the graduation ceremony. Marcus came out of his room looking surprisingly adult in his cap and gown, though his tie was completely crooked. Without even thinking, I stepped forward to fix it for him. "Nervous?" I asked. "A little," he admitted. "Did you feel this way at your graduation?" "Everyone does," I reassured him. "Just try to enjoy it. You earned this." And even though I knew his path had been paved with a lot more support and a lot less pressure than mine, I meant it. Marcus had his own struggles, and this was his day. The ceremony was pretty standard. Long speeches, the calling of hundreds of names, the turning of the tassels. I was seated between my mom, who was sniffling proudly the whole time, and my dad, who seemed unusually energized. When they called Marcus's name, my dad let out a whoop so loud that people in the rows around us turned to stare. I clapped enthusiastically, trying to push down the memory of my own college graduation, where my dad had spent the whole time checking his watch. "Our boy did it," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Some people didn't think he could, but we always knew. I had to bite my tongue to stop myself from pointing out that Marcus had barely done it, passing his final exams by the skin of his teeth, while I had graduated summa cum laude from a nationally ranked university. "Today is not about you," I reminded myself for the 1,000th time. It never is. After the ceremony, we all gathered outside for photos. I ended up taking most of them, only stepping into a shot when an aunt insisted on getting one of the Shaw children. As we posed, Marcus's arm thrown casually around my shoulders, I wondered if anyone else could see how my dad angled his body just slightly away from me, or how his beaming smile seemed to dim just a little whenever I was in the frame. As we were driving home, my mom turned around in the front passenger seat to look at me. "Becca, did you see the Johnsons there? Their daughter Sarah is going to the same graduate school as you. Isn't that a nice coincidence?" "That's great," I said, genuinely surprised and a little touched that she'd remembered that detail about my plans. "Maybe you two can carpool," my dad chimed in from the driver's seat. "Save some gas money. That program's going to cost you a pretty penny." And just like that, the small flicker of feeling seen was extinguished, replaced by another reminder that I was, in their eyes, a financial calculation, not a source of pride. Back at home, I helped set the table with the good china and arrange the flowers my mom had bought. Through the dining room window, I could see my dad in a deep, animated conversation with my uncle, gesturing excitedly toward the garage, which had been kept locked and shuttered all day. The surprise, whatever it was obviously in there. My stomach clenched with a strange sense of foreboding. Something about today felt different, like we were speeding toward a cliff I couldn't see yet. I shook the feeling off and focused on the task at hand. I had to make this evening special for Marcus. That's what good big sisters do. By 7 o'clock, the house was buzzing with conversation and filled with the mouth-watering smell of my mother's cooking. The dining table was extended to its maximum length to fit everyone: grandparents, aunts, uncles, a few close family friends, and Marcus's godparents, who had flown in from out of state just for the occasion. I was wearing a simple navy blue dress I'd found on sale, and I'd taken extra care with my appearance. A small, hopeful part of me, the part that still desperately craved my father's approval, thought that maybe if I looked the part of a successful, put-together adult, he might finally see me as one. Marcus was at the head of the table, still wearing his graduation gown, beaming as relatives came by to congratulate him and slip envelopes of cash into his hand. My mom was a blur of motion, refilling wine glasses and bringing out endless platters of food. My dad stood near Marcus, his hand resting proudly on his son's shoulder, recounting Marcus's challenging academic journey to anyone who would listen. "School doesn't come easy to everyone," he was telling my grandmother. But Marcus here, he persevered. He showed real character, pushing through when things got tough. I nursed a glass of wine and offered polite smiles, deflecting the usual questions about my life with short, vague answers. "Work is great, thanks for asking. Yes, still planning on grad school next year. No, not seeing anyone special right now, just focused on my career." Dinner was served, and the conversation stayed in safe territory. Marcus's graduation, summer plans, a cousin's upcoming wedding. I mostly stayed quiet, a role I had perfected over the years at family functions. As dessert was being served, my mom's incredible apple pie with vanilla ice cream, my dad stood up and tapped his glass with a spoon. The chatter slowly died down as everyone turned to look at him. "I just want to thank everyone for coming tonight to celebrate a huge milestone in our family," he began, his voice booming with the confidence he used at his construction sites. "Today, our son graduated from high school. A round of applause went around the table. Marcus ducked his head, grinning. Now, some kids just breeze through school without breaking a sweat, my dad continued, and I felt his eyes flick to me for a fraction of a second before landing back on Marcus. And then there are the fighters, the ones who have to earn every single grade, who have to push themselves beyond what comes easy. Those are the ones who really find out what they're made of. More murmurs of agreement. My Uncle Henry raised his glass to Marcus. "Marcus," my dad said, his voice softening, "your mother and I could not be prouder of the young man you've become. You've shown determination, character, and a whole lot of heart. You've proven you can tackle challenges and come out stronger, and that deserves some real recognition." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, sleek box, placing it on the table in front of Marcus. "Son, we know you've been saving up for a car, working those shifts at the mall. That shows responsibility, planning ahead." Marcus nodded, looking a little confused but clearly pleased by the public praise. My dad smiled, then glanced toward the window that looked out onto our driveway. "But we thought you deserved something a little more special for this achievement. Something to help you get started on the next chapter of your life." He pushed the small box toward Marcus. With slightly trembling fingers, Marcus opened it. Inside was a key fob with the unmistakable Ford Mustang logo on it. The table erupted in gasps and cheers. Marcus's eyes went wide. "No way," he whispered. My dad's grin widened. "Way," he said, trying to sound cool. "It's parked out in the garage. Convertible. Race red, just like you wanted." Chairs scraped against the floor as everyone scrambled to follow Marcus and my dad to the garage. I stayed in my seat for a moment, a cold, heavy weight settling deep in my gut. A brand new Mustang. For graduating high school with a C- average, I thought of my beat-up old sedan with over 200,000 miles on it, which I'd bought myself with money I saved from working 3 jobs through college. Eventually, I trailed the group out to the garage, hanging back as everyone gushed over the gleaming red car. It had to have cost at least $38,000. Marcus was in the driver's seat, his hands gliding over the leather steering wheel, his face a picture of pure, unadulterated joy. "This is insane," he kept saying. "I can't believe this is mine." I forced a smile onto my face and waited for the crowd to thin. I gave Marcus a quick hug. "Congratulations," I said, and even with the storm of hurt and confusion inside me, I meant it. His happiness was real and infectious. "You're gonna be the coolest guy at community college, right?" He laughed, too caught up in the moment to notice the tightness in my voice. "Dad says I can drive us all up to Crescent Lake next weekend for Memorial Day." The party continued back inside with champagne and cake. Everyone was making plans for summer road trips in the new car. Through it all, I kept up my supportive sister act, even though my face was starting to ache from the forced smile. As the evening wound down and people started to leave, I fell into my usual role of clearing the table and carrying dishes to the kitchen. I was loading the dishwasher when my dad walked in, loosening his tie. "Good party," he said, setting an empty glass on the counter. "It was," I agreed. "Marcus is ecstatic." My dad nodded, then leaned against the counter, crossing his arms. His expression shifted, becoming all business. "Becca, your mother and I have been talking." Something in his tone made me stop what I was doing, my hand frozen mid-air. "You've been living here for almost 2 years now since you graduated," he continued. "You have a steady job. You're 25 years old. It's time you started contributing properly around here." I blinked, completely thrown. I already buy groceries every other week, and I paid for the new water heater last month. He waved his hand dismissively. "That's not what I mean. Starting this month, we'll need $850 for rent, due by Sunday." I just stared at him, waiting for the punchline. When it didn't come, I finally found my voice. "You can't be serious. Not after you just bought Marcus a brand new car for barely graduating." His face hardened. "That's completely different. Marcus is just starting out. You're an adult with a career and responsibilities, and $850 is well below market rate for this area, as I'm sure you know." "I'm saving for my master's," I said. hearing my voice tremble. You know that. That's the whole reason I'm still living at home. Plans change, he said with a cold shrug. $850 by Sunday. He turned to walk out, then paused at the door. And don't bring this up with Marcus. There's no need to ruin his big day with adult problems. As he walked away, leaving me standing there, surrounded by the remnants of the party, something inside me that had been bending under pressure for my entire life finally snapped. After the last guest had finally gone and Marcus had taken off to meet up with some friends, I found my dad in his home office, looking over some blueprints. My mom was in the living room pretending to read a magazine, but I could see her eyes darting nervously toward the office door as I knocked and walked in without waiting for an answer. "We need to finish our conversation," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. My dad looked up, a flash of annoyance on his face. "There's nothing to discuss. Rent is $850 due on Sunday. It's perfectly fair." I took a deep breath. This isn't about the money. It's about the timing. It's about the double standard. You just spent tens of thousands of dollars on a luxury car for Marcus as a graduation gift. When I graduated, twice with honors, I got a mug and more responsibilities. He leaned back in his chair, his expression hardening into that dismissive look I knew so well. "You're comparing apples and oranges again, Becca. Marcus needed the boost. You never did. So I'm being penalized for being self-sufficient, for not needing a constant stream of rewards just to meet basic expectations? Don't be so dramatic," he scoffed. "You're being treated like the adult you are. Adults pay their own way. Then why isn't Marcus being treated like an adult? Why, he's 19 now. He can vote, he can join the army. Why does he get a free ride while I get a bill?" My dad stood up, his patience gone. "Because that's how we've decided to parent each of you. It's based on your different needs." "No," I said, my voice dropping to a quiet, firm tone. "It's because you value him more than me. You always have." The words just hung there in the air, the unspoken truth that had defined our family for my entire life, finally given a voice. My father's expression shifted, surprise, then anger, then a cold, calculating look. "You want to know why Marcus gets treated differently?" he said, his voice dangerously low. "It's because he's worth it." The words hit me like a physical blow. I had always suspected he felt this way, but to hear it said so bluntly with no attempt to soften it stole the air from my lungs. "Robert!" My mother was suddenly in the doorway, her face pale. She must have been listening the whole time. "You don't mean that." "I'm just being honest," my dad shot back, his eyes still locked on me. "Becca wants to be treated like an adult?" "Well, adults can handle the truth. Marcus has potential. With the right support, he could take over the business one day. Something Becca has never shown the slightest interest in. Because you never once offered it to me," I said quietly. He just barreled on as if I hadn't spoken. "Marcus has charisma. He connects with people. He'll go far with the right backing. Becca has chosen her own path, a path we advised against. Fine. But that means she's on her own financially too." My mom stepped between us, as if she could physically block the emotional fallout. "Robert, stop it. Becca has always been a wonderful, hard-working, responsible daughter, and she's throwing it all away on a dead-end job and a degree that's going to bury her in debt. For what? To listen to other people's problems all day? What kind of a choice is that?" And there it was, the real issue. It wasn't that I hadn't achieved enough, it was that my achievements weren't the ones my father valued. My independence wasn't a virtue to him, it was a betrayal. "My career choice is valid," I said, fighting to keep my voice from cracking. "Social work helps people. It matters. So does real work," he retorted. "Building things, creating jobs, leaving something tangible behind." My mom put a hand on his arm. "Robert, please. Let's all just calm down and talk about this in the morning when we're not so emotional." But I was done. I was done with sweeping things under the rug. "No, Mom, this needs to be said. Dad, I have spent my entire life trying to earn your approval. Do you have any idea what it feels like to bring home perfect grades and have them just dismissed? To work 3 jobs through college just to avoid asking you for a dime, only to watch you hand Marcus everything on a silver platter? Marcus has different challenges. He started, but I cut him off. Yes, he does. And I love him. This isn't about Marcus. This is about you and the way you've made me feel like an afterthought in my own family. Tonight was just the final, undeniable proof that nothing I ever do will ever be good enough for you. We heard the sound of a car pulling up outside, doors slamming, and voices calling goodnight. Marcus was home. The confrontation was about to end. My father's face became a stone mask. $850 by Sunday. If that's too much for you, then maybe it's time you found your own place. The words were so final, so dismissive, that something inside me just gave up. All the years of hoping, of making excuses, of telling myself that family was just complicated, it all collapsed under the weight of that one cold sentence. "You're right," I said, surprising myself with the calm in my voice. "It is time." My mother looked horrified. "Becca, don't be hasty. Your father doesn't mean it. We can talk tomorrow." But I looked at my father's cold, unyielding face, and I knew with absolute certainty that he meant every single word. And for the first time, I saw with perfect, painful clarity that nothing was ever going to change unless I was the one who changed it. "I'm going to bed," I said quietly. "It's been a long day." As I turned to leave, my father called out after me, "Remember, $850 by Sunday." I didn't answer. In my heart, I already knew I wouldn't be there on Sunday. Marcus burst through the door then, still buzzing from his celebration. "Best day ever," he announced, completely oblivious to the thick tension in the room. I gave him a quick hug as I passed him. "I'm glad, Marcus. You deserve to be happy." And in spite of everything, I meant it. My fight was with my parents, not with my brother who had simply played the part he'd been given. Back in my room, I sat on the edge of the bed and felt the strange, hollow sensation of my heart breaking. It wasn't the sharp pain I'd always imagined, but more like a rope snapping. There was sadness, of course, but there was also a strange, dizzying sense of lightness. For the first time in my life, I was seeing my family for who they really were, without any filters of hope or rationalization. I heard my mom knock softly on my door, but I pretended to be asleep. Tomorrow was going to be hard enough. Tonight, I just needed to think. Sleep was impossible that night. I just lay there, replaying my father's words, "Because he's worth it." 4 simple words that summed up a lifetime of feeling like I was second best. Sometime around 3 a.m., I opened my laptop and started looking at my finances. My job paid $45,000 a year before taxes. Not bad for an entry-level position, but not great in our city. I had managed to save almost $18,000 for my master's by living at home and being incredibly frugal. If I repurposed that money, it would be enough for a security deposit, first and last month's rent, and some basic furniture. I sent a text to Chloe, not expecting her to be awake. "Dad's demanding $850 rent." When I pointed out he just bought Marcus a Mustang, he told me it's because Marcus is worth it. "I think I'm done." To my surprise, she replied instantly, "I'm awake, prepping for a presentation." "Oh my God, Becca, that's awful. What are you going to do?" "I think I have to move out, like now. My couch is yours, for as long as you need it." No questions asked. Her offer brought tears to my eyes. We'd been best friends since our freshman year of college, and she had always seen the cracks in my family's perfect facade. "Thank you. I might take you up on that while I look for a place. Seriously, anytime. Tonight if you need to." I put down my phone and started searching for apartments in my price range. The options were slim, but I found a few studios that looked promising. I bookmarked them. As the sun started to rise, I finally drifted off to a restless sleep. My decision made, but my heart's still aching. When my alarm went off, I just lay there for a few minutes listening to the morning sounds of the house. My mom in the kitchen, the coffee maker gurgling, my dad's heavy footsteps in the hall. For a second, a wave of preemptive homesickness washed over me. But then I remembered my father's cold eyes, his cruel words, and the feeling was replaced by a quiet resolve. At breakfast, I put on a performance of normalcy. My dad didn't mention our fight. My mom watched me with worried eyes but didn't say anything. "Marcus and I are going to the dealership to finalize the paperwork for his car," my dad announced. "Then we're taking it for a spin up to the lake. Want to come, Eleanor?" My mom hesitated, glancing at me. "What about you, Becca? Want to join us?" "I'm pretty tired from yesterday," I said with a forced smile. "I think I'll just stay here and catch up on some reading." My dad just nodded, completely unfazed. "We'll be back around dinner," my mom said, squeezing my shoulder as she left. "Maybe we can watch that show you like tonight?" "Sure, Mom," I said, knowing it was an empty promise. Once they were gone, the house was silent. I stood in the kitchen, looking at the height chart on the pantry door, the fridge covered in photos and Marcus's sports schedules, the herb garden I'd planted on the windowsill. There was love here. I knew that. But it was broken and uneven. For a second, I wavered. Was I overreacting? But then I remembered the long, consistent pattern of behavior, and I knew I wasn't. I went to my room and started to pack. I took my clothes, my most important books, my laptop, and my work attire. I found a box of old report cards and academic medals, tokens of achievements that had never been properly celebrated. I left it behind. Around noon, I called my supervisor and told her I needed to take a few personal days. She was incredibly understanding. By 3 p.m., my car was packed with the essentials. All that was left was the note. I sat at my desk trying to find the right words. Finally, I wrote, "Dear Mom, Dad, and Marcus, I've decided it's time for me to move out. Last night made it clear that my place in this family isn't what I thought it was. Dad, you're right that I'm an adult and need to pay my own way, so I'm going to do that, completely. I won't be paying rent because I won't be living here. I'm staying with a friend while I find an apartment. Mom, I love you and I'm sorry to upset you, but I can't keep pretending the dynamic here isn't hurting me. Kyle, this is not your fault. I'm proud of you. Enjoy the car. This is between me and our parents. I'll be in touch. Love, Becca." I left the note on the fridge, held by a magnet from my mom's collection. Standing in the entryway, keys in hand, I felt a storm of emotions. Grief, anger, fear, and under it all, a growing sense of freedom. "Goodbye," I whispered to the empty house, and then I walked out, closing the door quietly behind me. The first few days at Chloe's were a blur. She was a lifesaver, setting up an air mattress and stocking the fridge with my favorite snacks. My phone started exploding that first evening. Marcus sent a series of panicked texts. "Becca, where are you? Mom won't stop crying. Please just tell me you're safe." I only replied to the last one, "I'm safe. With a friend. Need space." My mom called over a dozen times. Her voicemails went from tearful pleas to angry accusations. My father's communication was telling. First, a curt text, "This is childish." Then a voicemail stating my theatrics wouldn't change anything. And finally, a formal email informing me I had until the end of the month to get the rest of my stuff. He never once asked if I was okay. My Aunt Carol called on the third day. "I'm not taking sides," she began, "but your parents are a mess. What happened?" I told her everything, including the "he's worth it" line. There was a long silence. "He said that? Those exact words?" she asked, her voice tight. "Yes." She sighed heavily. "Oh, Robert, look, what he said was cruel and untrue. But you know your father. He's always been intimidated by you. You're smart and independent, just like his mother was. It's not an excuse, but it's an explanation." Her validation was a balm on my self-doubt. "For what it's worth," she added, "I think you did the right thing. Just don't cut them off completely. Your mom is devastated, and Marcus is just lost. By the end of the week, I had found a small but perfect studio apartment. The landlady, a kind retired teacher named Mrs. Chen, seemed to understand immediately. "Sometimes family is the very reason we need our own space," she said, handing me the keys. With housing secured, I agreed to meet Marcus at a coffee shop. He looked exhausted. "Are you coming home?" was the first thing he asked. "No," I said gently. "I found my own place." His face fell. "Is it because of my car?" "I'll give it back." "It's not about the car, Marcus. It's about patterns that have been there our whole lives. Dad said some things that night. Things that made me realize I need to be on my own." He looked down at his coffee. "Dad's really mad. He says, you're being selfish." "What do you think?" I asked. He shrugged. "I think something really bad happened that no one's telling me about." I told him a gentler version of the truth about the rent and the argument. His first question was, "Are you okay? Like really okay?" It was the first time anyone in my family had asked about my well-being instead of how my absence affected them. "I'm getting there," I said honestly. "It's scary, but it's also exciting." 2 weeks after leaving, I moved into my new studio. As I sat on my secondhand couch that night, surrounded by my own things, I felt an incredible sense of peace. This was mine. A week later, I got an email from a former professor offering me a paid research assistant position that came with partial tuition reimbursement. Things were starting to fall into place. Over the next 6 months, my life transformed. I started my master's program, excelled in my classes, and built a new social life. I spoke with my mom weekly. Our calls were tense at first, but slowly became more normal. My dad retreated into a stony silence. It was Marcus who told me Dad had forbidden my name from being mentioned at the dinner table. Then, one evening in November, there was a knock on my door. It was my parents. My mom looked nervous. My dad looked deeply uncomfortable. "May we come in?" my mother asked. I stepped aside. "Your brother is struggling," my dad said, getting straight to the point. "He's talking about dropping out of college." I was stunned. "What?" "He seemed fine last week when we had coffee." They looked at each other, surprised. "You've been seeing him?" my mom asked. "Every couple of weeks," I said. My dad's jaw tightened. My mom explained that Marcus had become withdrawn and was fighting with them constantly. "He says he doesn't see the point in school if he's just going to end up working for his father anyway," she said. A realization dawned on me. With me gone, the family's dysfunctional balance was thrown off and all the pressure was now on Marcus. "We thought maybe you could talk to him," my mom pleaded. "I'm happy to talk to him," I said, "but I won't pressure him. He needs to figure out what he wants, not what you want for him." My father, surprisingly, agreed. Before they left, my father looked at me, his expression something I had never seen before: uncertainty. "I said things that night," he mumbled. "Things I shouldn't have. It wasn't an apology, but from him, it was monumental. Your mother has pointed out that I've been uneven in how I treat you and Kyle." "That's one way to put it," I said, unable to stop myself. To my shock, he replied, "No, she's right. I expected more from you and gave you less. It wasn't fair. I don't know how to fix it, but I'd like to try." The journey to rebuild was slow and awkward. I supported Marcus as he told our father he wanted to take a gap year to figure things out, a conversation that, miraculously, ended in compromise. My relationship with my mom blossomed without my dad's influence, and we found a genuine friendship. My relationship with my father remained the most difficult, but he started making small efforts, asking about my studies, sending a formal email to congratulate me on a published paper. A year after I left, I hosted a small dinner party. My parents, Marcus, Aunt Carol, and Chloe were all there. Watching my father talk politely with my professor and seeing my mother helping in my kitchen felt surreal. The power dynamic had shifted. I was no longer the daughter desperate for approval. I was an independent woman choosing to have a relationship with my family on my own terms. My experiences gave me a unique empathy in my work as a counselor. Kyle eventually decided to pursue business, but on his own terms, focusing on sustainable entrepreneurship. My father, having learned a hard lesson about control, grudgingly supported him. That night, which felt like the worst of my life, was actually the beginning of my real one. It forced a change that was long overdue. The greatest lesson I learned was that self-worth is an inside job. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for your family is to walk away from a dynamic that diminishes you. By choosing myself, I hadn't just saved myself, I had created the space for my entire family to find a healthier, more honest way of being together. Have you ever had to walk away from a situation to protect your self-respect? What challenging family dynamics have you had to navigate? I would love to read your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe for more stories about finding your strength. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, please share this video with them. Thank you for listening, and remember, choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's essential.